You said Cossack, right?
Kosack.
Kosack, sorry.
Kosack.
Great far. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Holler, tnholler.com. At the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook. We're also hollering across the state. Thanks to your support, all that is possible. Chip in a few bucks a month and get a Holler hat. And if you need some jewelry in Nashville, AJ Martin Parker. And if you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld. These people are very supportive of us, so we want to make sure we shout them out. Today, we're talking to somebody else who is running for the seat in Brentwood, currently occupied by the bully Bulso. Kurt Kosack, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. So you're running in Brentwood. I think people who follow the Holler know that Gino Bully Bulso is one of the most extreme reps up there. What made you decide to jump into this race? And just so people know, that go to kosackfortnhouse.com to check out your stuff. What made you decide to get in the race, Kurt?
Well, I'm concerned about our democracy. Our democracy is based on the premise that our representatives listen to and represent the people. And it's pretty obvious that that's not happening now. Most people are in favor of reasonable gun regulations, and the Tennessee legislature doesn't do anything about it. Most people are in favor of women making their own choices about reproductive issues. Our legislators aren't doing anything about it. Most Tennesseans are for funding public schools, but our legislators are apparently not hearing that. So I like the phrase I saw on social media the other day: democracy is on the ballot. And the other thing that's on the ballot too that I haven't seen is courage is on the ballot also. For us to win this race, and this would be a big upset because Brentwood is very red. For us to win this race, we're going to have to get every Democrat's going to have to vote, and we're going to have to get some Republican voters. And the question is, do Republican voters have the courage to vote for a common sense Democrat? So, and that's the question. I don't know, but I'm going to challenge our Republican voters to see if they have the courage to do that. When I tell my Republican relatives and friends, I tell them my platform, I tell them my values, they go, "Oh, that sounds good." And then I say, "I'm running as a Democrat," and they go, I don't know if I can vote for you. So I'm going to challenge them by saying, do you have the courage to vote for someone who agrees with most of the things you agree with, and who is who would be a common sense representative?
Well, we just saw the Vandy poll recently that shows that what you're saying is true, that a lot of the things that Democrats are fighting for, most of Tennessee agrees with. Let me just ask you, who is Kurt Kosack? When people talk to you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and, how do you pitch yourself?
Well, I pitch myself as having a unique perspective that might help me beat Gino Bulso. I was a naval aviator for 5.5 years, an officer. I flew in the F-14 Tomcat, two cruises in the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, landed on a carrier 281 times. Then I was a sales engineer in Tennessee. I made about 10,000 sales calls in my career as a sales engineer working for a great company. And my wife asked me, "How do you know you made 10,000 calls?" I said, "Well, I counted them. So I know that I made at least 10,000 sales calls." Then I was an attorney for about 5 years. I represented mostly criminal defendants charged with drug crimes, mostly young men, at-risk youth. And then I finally, at age 48, I finally got the job that I'd been wanting to have for a long time. I became a public school teacher, and I taught for 17 years, 13 years in Metro and 4 years in Summit High School in Williamson County. So I think my background of military, business, legal, and education make me a strong candidate for this position.
People should know you do have a primary. Is there anything that separates you in terms of policy wise, do you think, from your opponent, or, you know, how do you kind of differentiate yourself in the primary?
Well, our platforms are really similar. I have a great opponent. Um, Probably the biggest thing is my first issue and my first platform issue. I believe, and I've never seen any politician say this anywhere in the country, but I believe that all public officials should substitute teach or work in a school in schools in their district 3 days a year, because what's happening now is our representatives have no idea what's happening in schools. They want to pass this voucher bill. And my question is, do you know, you're saying the schools are bad. Do you know why? No, we don't know why. So I think we could have a renaissance in public education in Tennessee and across America if our politicians actually got into the classrooms, and just calling the roll would be beneficial. Just talking to other teachers, having lunch with other teachers. And it's interesting with Gino Bulso. Was at a town hall meeting, and I said to him after the meeting, I said, Gino, do you go out to schools very often? And he said, yeah, oh yeah, I go out and I talk about this, I talk about that, I talk about this. And I didn't have time to say what I thought, but I'm thinking, Gino, you need to go out to schools to listen. You need to be asking teachers, what can I do to help you? You need to be talking to principals. What can I do to help? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that he's suing the Williamson County School District. That's like somebody saying to you, Justin, let's say you've just hired somebody to work with you. And they say, hey, I'm really glad to be working with you, Justin. And by the way, I'm suing you. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So our politicians need to be asking questions like, how can we help you guys? But no, they're talking about vouchers and they're talking about how bad the school systems are. So I think that's my major difference between my opponent and myself. It's the education part, because I have 17 years experience, and my experience is pretty interesting because I taught for 13 years in Metro. So I've been in inner city schools. I know what happens in inner city schools. Noah Nordstrom that you had on a few weeks ago, I know exactly what he's talking about. And then on the other hand, I taught in the best school district in Tennessee at Summit High School. So I know what it's like to be in the best district in Tennessee. So it's,
Well, I would say I have one adjustment to your plan there. I don't think I could subject kids to Gino Bolso for 3 days. I'd rather make Gino be a student for 3 days. How about that? Can we make that change? Because I can't imagine Tim Rudd, and certainly not Paul Sherrill, going in and having to teach these kids I don't want to put our kids through that.
Well, that's a really good point. People have said that, we don't want our kids with Gino Bulso, but really, as a substitute teacher, you're not really teaching we've got the Schoology learning management system, and the regular teacher normally leaves assignments on the Schoology system. So we wouldn't be asking them to teach, but that is a very valid point. My point is they need to go into schools.
Absolutely.
And not do the dog and pony show. The dog and pony show is where they come in, the principals lead them around the school to the very best classrooms, the ambassadors with their coats and ties on meet them, and then they leave and they say, oh, everything's great. And then they see the ACT scores and they say, well, maybe everything isn't great.
Well, and also, I think Gino's probably not going to our public schools. He's probably going to the private schools, because I know his son runs a school that takes voucher money, and he's trying to expand vouchers, which seems like a conflict of interest there. And then, as you mentioned, he's suing public schools, and he's also changing the laws that benefit lawsuits like his. So, and I want to let you weigh in on this too, because one of the clients that he has in that lawsuit was very publicly attacking public schools in general. The idea of public schools, basically saying, these are government schools, we have to get our kids out of there. Do you think it's fair to say that Gino Bolso is against public schools?
Well, his actions indicate that he is. The book banning thing, and then the vouchers. And I loved what he said about vouchers. Well, it's only $144 million. I think I got the number correct.
That's
out of
right.
8 billion, it's only
That's just the
144.
voucher part. Yeah.
Yeah, it's to go to vouchers. And I taught math in high school, and I know that 144 million compared to 8 billion isn't that big a number, but 144 million is still a lot of money. And the thing about my idea of getting politicians in classrooms, the price tag is zero. And it would be much more effective. It's like I agree with my Republican friends. We can and should improve public education. The solution is not vouchers. The solution is knowledge to make wise decisions, and we don't have that now in Tennessee.
We don't. I see people are on here commenting. Alexandra says so no school choice for all. I'll just say, my piece on that is that, this school choice, this notion of school choice is kind of, they're hiding behind that really what they're doing is steering public dollars to private schools, and the vouchers will be back. I know they're planning to bring it back. Governor Lee is out there right now finding candidates to get behind based solely on this voucher plan and people who get behind his voucher scam. He's trying to primary Republicans that stood up to the scam, which we're told there were only 22 House members that were behind it by the end of it. Talk a little bit about your opposition to vouchers and how you came to that.
Well, Governor Lee says he's going to reintroduce the voucher plan next year, and he says we've got wide support for it. Now, wide support, it got defeated. Only 22 representatives supported him. And it's just like, am I missing something here? That he says there's wide support for it, but they couldn't pass it this year. So they're going to try to pass it next year. I just think that we can improve our public schools without steering money to private schools. The idea that my taxes are going to go for somebody to go to a private school, I don't like that. I mean, if you want to send your kid to a private school, FRA or Innsworth or wherever, fine. But I don't want to have to pay for it. And the other thing that gets me about vouchers, again, being a math teacher, the math doesn't work out. So they're going to give somebody $7,000. What are you going to do with $7,000? FRA, all those schools I just mentioned are probably 25 to 30,000 now. And then, so you're going to send them to a small private academy. Well, the best teachers are in public schools because they get paid the most. So why would you send your kid to a private academy where the teachers aren't as good as public school teachers? So I just, it's an indication that they don't know what they're talking about. So that's why I think they should get into classrooms and find out firsthand what's going on in our schools.
Well, the answer to what you're saying, I think, is that most of the kids that end up taking these vouchers in the states that have done this are already in private schools. So this isn't really about kids leaving public schools. It's really about a coupon for the wealthy that are already in private schools and allowing those schools to raise their tuition in many instances. So it's really just a way. And I believe that Governor Lee is driven mostly by his, frankly, religious ideology. And this is a way that they see that they're steering public dollars into these private religious schools. So, and I'll address some of these comments that I'm seeing about what you guys are saying about school choice at the end of this, but I do want to move on with Kurt for a minute. You mentioned the gun issue is another part of your platform. I think you also mentioned that women's reproductive rights are part of your platform. What's your take on our draconian abortion ban here, where Republicans are voting even to force little girls to carry to term? And I know, just to bring it to Gino for a minute, Gino recently passed a bill to force those public schools that we're talking about to show an ideological anti-abortion video in our public schools. So he's accusing, LGBT folks of indoctrination when he's actually practicing indoctrination. What's your thought on the Baby Olivia bill that Gino Bulso recently pushed?
I think it's inappropriate. I have confidence in biology teachers throughout middle school and high schools to show an appropriate biologically correct video of the reproduction system. The idea that the state is going to tell teachers what they have to show in terms of reproductive issues, it's just like, I mean, let teachers do their jobs. They know what to do. They've been trained. They know what to teach in biology. And so I just think it's an intrusion into the public education system. And it's just interesting that, you know, a lot of Republican politicians and Gino say, well, we want to give parents choices. Well, you know, the book banning thing, that they're going to tell me what my kids can read at school, but you know, it doesn't match up. It doesn't match up. So I just think we should have more confidence in our teachers to teach what they know.
Absolutely. So you're running in Brentwood. People should know your website is kosackfortnhouse.com. What else do you want people to know about how they can support your campaign before I let you go here?
Well, contributions are always welcome. Our postage costs are going to be high. Posting yard signs, helping with canvassing, being poll greeters on election day, all those things can help. Go to our website and sign up. Send me an email. So we'd welcome any support because it's going to be a big battle to take on Gino.
All right, Kurt, thanks for joining us on here. Appreciate it. Kosackfortnhouse.com, running in Brentwood to replace Gino Bulso, one of the absolute worst, most extreme up there. And whoever comes out of this primary, good luck to you in that effort.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you having me on.
Take care. Again, that's Kurt Kosack, Kosack for TN House. I didn't want to make him sit on here while I go through some of your comments here, but I do want to address, I see we have two people on here who appear to be adamant about school choice. So you say no school choice for all. Well, I would say plenty of people have choice. Everybody has choice. It's just a matter of what our public school dollars are funding, and to steer taxpayer dollars to private schools as a coupon for people who are already in them. Yeah, that is not something that we support. Todd Warner, a Republican, called that an entitlement, said it was expanding government. And the idea that it's not going to hurt our public schools to do that, it's just flies in the face of reality. We've seen it hurting public schools in the states that have already done that. And so here's like a more honest comment. You say we do need to get children out of public schools because they've turned into places where too much political ideology and immorality is pushed. And, you know, I think this is at the root of the push for vouchers. So I think this is honest, but this is not how they pitch it. So the issue I have with this is if Governor Lee were to stand up there and say, we need to get children out of public schools because they've turned into places where too much political ideology and immorality is pushed, he'd be honest in saying that, but that's not popular. Nobody would run on that because it's an attack on our public schools. It's not true also. Like, are you somebody, and feel free to answer, that has kids in public schools? Because I have kids in public schools, and that's not true at all. They're not indoctrinating them. I mean, and it's not like these vouchers are just going to Nashville and Memphis, which is where they originally started. Now they want them everywhere. So again, I just go back to, these are the talking points that I see on social media all the time. And I think they're more honest in terms of speaking to the spirit of what's actually happening here. But Governor Lee and the Republicans are not honestly running on that. They're not honestly using these talking points to push them because that's not popular. What you're saying there is actually quite extreme and does not jive with what the majority of Tennessee wants, which is why they don't actually use that when they run. We are seeing some of the lobbyists that are sending out materials say stuff like that, but the legislators themselves are not running openly attacking public schools. You know why? Because people actually like their public schools. There's this notion that our public schools are failing. They are not failing. You say we've had 188 years to fix public schools. Money is not the problem. First of all, in Tennessee, we're at the bottom in per pupil spending, no matter what they tell you. So money is the problem here. But what you have to remember is the metrics that they're using to paint the picture that our public schools are failing are intentionally designed to make you feel that way. So, every chance they get, they are putting our teachers, our schools in a box to get the results that they want. And actually, there was a whole thing recently where some of the principals and superintendents were saying that, they basically changed what they were measuring. And then this whole thing about TCAP and how they're using that to say that our kids can't read, that is not what TCAP measures. So the testing place itself, Pearson has said that is not what TCAP measures. So what I'm trying to tell you is basically that the foxes are guarding the hen house here. The foxes are raiding the hen house. The people who are against public schools, who actually agree with the things that you're saying there, are the ones that are designing the whole system to make our public schools look bad in order to push this private school voucher program that will make a lot of private entities very wealthy. So at the end of the day, this is a ideological push, but it's also a heist intended to steer billions of dollars to private hands. And I don't necessarily think Governor Lee is doing it because he wants money, because I think he has a lot of money, but I do think he sees it as his way of, quote unquote, expanding God's kingdom, as Betsy DeVos put it, and steering all of these public dollars to private, mostly religious schools. That is the goal. That is what they're trying to do. And now they're changing it to make it so that these charter schools can be openly religious. And I think, to me, that is a bigger part of what's going on here than they're letting on. And here you say, which I am not surprised by, no, we homeschool our children for the very reasons I mentioned. Well, that is not a surprise to me. So here you are saying, oh, public schools have all this immorality and ideology and they're indoctrinating our kids, but your kids aren't even in public schools. And that is most of what we find, is that the people that are pushing these talking points, their kids are not in public schools. You don't know what you're talking about. You're not there. I am. Kirk taught there. That's not what's going on here. The idea that like Williamson County Public Schools are indoctrinating our kids, like, it's just nonsense. We are the belly of the beast here. We are a very conservative area. We don't have teachers indoctrinating kids here. That's just not happening, But are they more tolerant of, LGBTQ kids than maybe they were a long time ago? Yes, that's a good thing. That's not indoctrination. I'm sorry. That is being, welcoming to all. And you homeschooling your kids, that's not a surprise to me, honestly. Public schools are constantly pushing the immorality of homosexuality. And this is what they tell you, but it is not true. They are not constantly pushing the immorality of No, that is not what's going on. Are they accepting to kids come out of the closet? Are they trying to, accommodate trans kids who are living very difficult lives, especially in communities like ours? Yes, but that is not constantly pushing the immorality of homosexuality. That's just not what's going on. And for Gino Bulso to sort of bring it full circle to the race that we're talking about today, to push a pride flag ban while carving out exceptions for the Confederate flag of all things, I think that really speaks to the hollowness of the morality behind what we're talking about here. And it's frankly overreach, which for the party of small government to be as overreaching as they have been ever since we started the holler, it's frankly shocking. And, again, we need to leave our teachers alone. We need to leave our public schools alone. And we need the people who aren't even in public schools to stop acting like they know what's going on there when these things are not actually happening there. This is a war on our public schools. They're trying to take already limited resources away from these public schools. And I am proud of Tennessee for standing up to it last session. And the fight is very much not over. So keep up the fight. Keep pushing back. We see through the nonsense, and we'll see you next time.